The theme of literacy under which we are gathered here is crucial to the future of humanity, because it is through education that the future generations are formed. Their worldview, their thinking, therefore their actions are formed by the basis of their education. The crisis of the world today, a crisis which is multidimensional, threatening to bring humanity, the earth ecosystems to collapse, is the result of the past approaches of education. It is because of what we established as the framework and foundation of education 200 years ago that we have today this gigantic crisis. And therefore we need to see what it is that went wrong and what is the correction that we need to bring about and place it in the context of Rotary's exemplary effort to change the base of education and bring literacy everywhere. The educational framework which has brought us to this crisis is the industrial education developed about 200 years ago in Europe. I call it industrial education because the whole system was designed for industry, and the system itself was industrial in its form and expression. The approach of the Industrial Revolution and the age of Industrial Revolution was to see everything in terms of machinery, to turn the children, the students, into good workers for the factories. Children were seen as raw material to be shaped, processed, and given a form that is predetermined, to be fitted like cogwheels into gigantic machinery of society. And in this process, as the child is beaten into shape, the child is dehumanized, his creativity killed, his mind numbed, and he becomes a passive, obedient worker. The system is extremely efficient. It has made us what we are. A further refinement to this approach was made when, under colonial rule, it was necessary to prevent the colonized people from ever revolting by believing that they were meant only to be slaves. And there was an attempt, therefore, to suppress the mind and conquer the mind of the people. This too has been extremely effective, and the result is where we are. But none of this can withstand the truth of things, and the truth within us rebels against these distortions, and there is always a struggle, a pushback, an attempt to rebuild, recreate, new create. And it is this struggle which we see today as the festering tensions underlying all activities of the national life. And we must recognize what it is that it points to, and then we can consciously bring forward, rather than through chaotic, dramatic revolutions, a quiet, direct, spontaneous, and beautiful emergence of that which is true within us individually and among us nationally, culturally. When we step back to the period of India before colonization, we find something very different. We find here is a culture which is the world's longest surviving in history. It goes back older than Mesopotamia or Rome or Greece or Egypt. And yet, while all other civilizations have died out, this alone continues, survives. And though it has gone through ups and downs, it is thriving. And even now it is coming up as perhaps the most powerful influence in the world's affairs. And we are poised on that brink already. And this is possible because at the very foundations of our civilization and culture was something which pointed always to established in permanence, eternity, infinity, reality, what is truth rather than phenomenal superficiality. We use the word spirituality, but we must understand by spirituality not a life-denying withdrawal, but a life-embracing, life-transforming spirit and spirituality. It is this which characterized India, and its educational system was designed to bring forward precisely these characteristics. And if you observe what it accomplished, it created a civilization which had three great characters. First, it had a powerful intellect. Second, it had a tremendous vitality, exploring everything. Nothing was left out of the domain of its conquest and exploration. And third, it went into the details and mastered to perfection. These three things were the outcome of its approach to education. We see also that in the very method of the education, it aimed first to establish a deep foundation in an extraordinary memory. You read something once and it is retained. You do not need to keep books with you because it is already a part of you. But this was just the first step. The second step was developing all the faculties of knowledge by which what is learned, what is observed, what is experienced can be taken through the process of rational understanding, deep thinking to develop new insights. But that was not enough. There was a third step which also was trained and developed through the educational system, opening the mind to a higher faculty, a higher power of cognition that today we refer to as intuition. To be able to tap into the highest potential of creativity, draw down that which has never been seen, which has never been created. And that was the culmination of that educational system. The result was a civilization which is so extraordinary, so rich, so compelling in every field of activity that it has developed. But the decline of India began when it turned away from these ideals, when it withdrew from this powerful base of its educational approach and fell into disuse, lost its creativity, fell into weakness, and so on. We are at a crucial time today when the rebuilding has to take place. 110 years ago, Sri Aurobindo, in this very space of Calcutta, established the National College of Bengal, where he began the process of this regeneration. He fought for India's complete freedom, Purna Swaraj. He said, not because we hate the British, not because they are not good rulers. It's because, he said, India has a destiny to fulfill in the world's affairs. She has something unique to contribute for the future of the world. And in order for her to be able to fulfill that destiny, she must first find herself, discover her soul. And for that, she must first be free. And therefore, we work for India's freedom. But it's not enough to be free. As you have seen, freedom has also been disastrous in certain areas. It is what we do with our freedom, he said, which is important. And he began even at that point, 110 years ago, to formulate the broad lines of the new educational system, drawing upon these past principles which were inherent in our old system, but organized for the modern mind, for the modern context of humanity and of India. And it is this which we must turn towards when we consider the work we have to do in education, in literacy. I see the effort of the Rotary to be a signpost, an indicator of great changes to come. Because unlike the government, what the Rotary does is well done. My association with the Rotary goes back 20 years, and I have seen this consistently everywhere in all the projects and all the efforts. And it mobilizes the most organized minds, the most organized capabilities of the best of our people into a specific outcome, clearly formulated, practically expressed. And when the Rotary takes a step in the direction of educational change, we know that it is a signpost for great changes to follow. But these changes should be based on the foundations of that innate approach which made India such an extraordinary genius. And I will point out 4 characteristics which we may keep in mind, which differentiate it from the industrial educational approach, the industrial paradigm. The first characteristic is that we do not focus on facts, but on development of faculties. While industrial education teaches you to learn by heart facts, which perhaps within 5 years would be obsolete. The new approach to education must focus on developing the faculties of knowledge. And when these faculties are developed, you can deal with facts smoothly, easily, effortlessly, and even renew them as you go along. It empowers you, liberates you, makes you master, not slave, not follower. The second characteristic of the new approach to education will be that it will not be rote but experiential. Not because somebody has said something that I must believe it to be true, but because I have experienced, validated, verified in my own life, with my own senses, with my own heart and mind. And an experiential learning is not merely reading. It's not merely playing with objects. It is a mind, heart, body, complete experience, and even spirit. An experiential learning, therefore, stays with you, is a part of you permanently. It is never lost. The third characteristic of the new approach will be that it will aim at an integral development. While the industrial education aims only at a left brain, a rational, and that to only partial development, the integral approach of education will include right brain, creativity, synthetic powers of the mind, but harmonize these with our heart and emotions, harmonize them with our body and the body's capability to express, and all aligned in a single being, centered around the core, the deepest truth within us, our soul. Integral is not holistic. Holistic means you include everything. But integral is when you unite around a center. And the center is who we truly are deep within us. The reason why we are here. The reason why we chose to take birth. And our deepest, highest potential and fulfillment in life. Our soul. The divine presence within us. While industrial education sees children as raw material to be beaten into shape, the integral approach looks at us as souls in evolution. The fourth characteristic of the new approach of education is that it is self-driven. It is not dependent on a teacher telling you at each step, do this, do that, correct this is wrong. The whole framework of the educational approach is self-correcting, self-learning, and this is how you empower children to become leaders and not dependent followers. These four characteristics should be built into the very paradigm, the pedagogy of our approach to literacy and generally to education. And you can see there are many ways to implement this according to the needs, according to the age groups, according to the environment, the space where you have to do your project. But if we keep these four characteristics in mind, then what we will do will be the rebuilding of our whole foundation of education. Literacy is the thin end of the wedge. It's the entry point through which we will bring about quietly a grassroots revolution for India. It will be a step in which the innate genius will be liberated. And that's when India, awakening to her own deepest spiritual truths, will take her rightful place among the Committee of Nations, fulfill her mission in the world in service to humanity. And all of us will be fulfilled in our efforts. Swami Vivekananda once declared that India is destined to be the guru of the world, and it is in this sense that we must understand it. To show by example how life can be lived, how the problems of life can be resolved, and how a new step can be made, manifesting in life beauty, harmony, love, knowledge, strength, in service to the divine, in service to humanity, in fulfillment of our purpose on earth. To this end, the Rotary will play a significant role, and if we keep in mind the necessary corrections required, we will all participate in the most important change and revolution in the world. Namaste.
I'm sure you are all thrilled with this speech because it's the futuristic approach and paradigm shift that he has shown us. I would like to